Old material's fun, but, you know, I'm kind of getting less nostalgic with time, so I'm more interested in now and later.
One of Canadian music's biggest and most emotionally honest songwriters is on our little show today. That's right, Leslie Feist joins me to talk about the pain and pleasure behind her new album, Pleasure. It's been 6 years since Feist's last record, and the truth is she didn't know if she could do it again. We'll talk about what brought her back. I'm Tom Power. You're watching Q.
I'm having breakfast, and suddenly this da 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 got into my brain.
That was Fred Penner with a tune that's going to be stuck in your head all day. But believe it or not, that actually turned into the title track to his new album of kid-friendly songs. Gather the family around the TV and come out of your log. Fred Penner is going to serenade you.
If not now, when?
Right.
And so you can't go on your whole life longing to do something and never have the guts to do it.
Yeah.
And so I just did.
That was Mary Walsh dropping great advice if you're avoiding a dream that feels too hard to pull off. For Mary, that dream was writing. And I'm not talking about writing comedy. Mary's new project is a really surprising turn. It's a work of dark fiction, not what you'd expect from Marg, Princess Warrior. All this plus a live performance from Leif Vollebekk and my chat with British rapper Little Simz today on Q. 6 years ago, Leslie Feist started to stare down a question that a lot of us ask ourselves. What next? She had just put out her album Medals, which won one of Canada's biggest music awards. But after the Polaris Music Prize, and after the tour, and after the pressure that comes with being an in-demand songwriter with a new album, what's next? Today, those 6 years spent thinking and writing and touring and pondering have led to this. Feist's brand new record, Pleasure, is unlike anything you've heard from Feist before. Have a look. Hi, Leslie.
Hello. Good morning.
It's so nice to meet you.
It's so nice to meet you, too.
In
the flesh.
I know. I was very excited when you were coming in this morning, and I want to say congratulations on the record.
Well, thanks. Like I was saying, it's nice to mark the day by coming in here.
It's nice and easy in here. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's not
hermetically sealed tower of CBC.
Yeah, I'm wearing tissue boxes on my feet. The radio audience can't see that. What do you feel? Like, what kind of emotions, what kind of thoughts go on through your head on a morning like this, on a release day morning?
It feels right on schedule. Feels right on time.
Really?
Like, it took forever. It feels like it felt like forever. It was an arduous time. You know, it took a long time for me to care and want to write, and then to get ready to make the record and have it arranged and queued up to be able to record, and then, you know, the whole thing it's increments of getting ready, but today it's sort of like, okay, well, obviously that's how long it took.
Because I would think that like 5 years ago, when you're not making this record, and this is a longer stretch. This is a long stretch between albums for you. That there'd be a certain amount of anticipation, and it'd kind of like being Christmas. Like you wake up and like, okay, that day that I thought about for years, that day that I thought about and kind of worried about, is now here. Does it feel like you expected?
Well, I guess because we played last night. It was the first show. Actually, my first show in like a few years.
You played at Trinity St. Paul last night.
That's right.
How did it go?
It was great, and it was also just sort of a reel making moment, like to put it into other people's ears, to actually be in a room, playing it to them, get their reaction. It kind of all became real, you know, because it's a bit of a intangible. An album, it's not something you can, I mean, until the day you hold it and touch it, it's just a concept. It's an idea. It's sound, you know.
Yeah, because you can vet mixes forever. You know, you can vet mixes. You can send mixing notes or mastering notes back and forth forever. But how about that experience of finally getting up in front of an audience of people who I know love your music, and actually debuting these songs for the first time to them?
Well, I pleased myself by playing the entire album beginning to end, sort of back to front, which I've never done before.
Right.
Sort of just for my own satisfaction to just tell that story beginning to end, which is actually how I'm going to tour. I decided last night.
Yeah. Just do the whole thing.
Yeah, just play the album, be in the present, you know, because playing the older stuff is, you know, it's great. It's getting into a time machine for me, and I love some of those songs, and they continue to tell me new stories, you know, which is, I appreciate which ones have been resilient enough to be able to do that, and then which ones have fallen by the wayside. And so the old material's fun, but, you know, I'm kind of getting less nostalgic with time, so I'm more interested in now and later.
Well, nostalgia can be a bad thing. Nostalgia can be a scary thing. It can be something we
weigh you down
and
a little.
we can lean on it a little too much.
Yeah.
And this isn't a nostalgic record at all.
No.
This is a really, really intimate record. Like, I felt like when I was listening to it, and I only listened to it last night, I felt like I was listening to it in my kitchen, making some soup, and
Perfect.
There were
target market.
yeah, check mark done, demographic done, soup makers of the CBC, and there were moments where I was like, I think she might be in the room with me right now. Like, it felt very intimate.
I was creeping up behind you.
Well, then I turned
kind
around.
Of weird.
Then I turned around, and there you were, and I said, "Oh, nice to meet you.
You want some soup?"
But there were moments that I really did feel like you were in the same room. There were moments that I felt a shortening of the distance between listener and performer, if that makes sense. And I know that you have said that you could pick up a guitar right now and play this record back to back, and that's a big change from any kind of nostalgia you might feel. There's not any big arrangements on this. There aren't that many instruments on this record. Tell me behind the decision. What was behind the decision to strip things back a little bit?
Well, maybe it's a kind of a playwright narrative choice in a way.
What do you mean?
I mean, in the sense that the stories that I was considering or wondering what to write about is this sort of limbo state of not. I mean, singing is a proclamation. You're so sure of something that you're now going to say it over and over and over, and you're going to encapsulate it in a song. You're going to amplify it. You're going to turn it into this slightly, you know, rise it up from real life and turn it into like something you know, and some sort of little thought bubble that belongs like to in history or something. And the state I was in was not that place. I didn't know much at that moment. You know, it was a bit of a foggy period for me. So to write about that liminal state between like abject not knowing and what like how do you pull apart that knot and then make a song about that in between state, and I don't know, maybe sort of press pause on time and just zero in on a moment, which is one of those dark, like when you're considering what's supposed to be going on, and then to focus in on that and write about it. You know, it's a privacy. It's a private sort of reckoning, and so I considered my sort of privacy going directly into other people's, that same place in them, you know?
Yeah, because when you zero in on a moment, like you said, the moment itself is good enough to be passed on to others. It doesn't need to be then reconsidered. You don't need to add trombones to that moment.
Right.
You know, that moment is honest enough.
Well, and also there's not a lot of voices, or it's when it's sort of a solitary opinion, then that's maybe the playwright side of things, where I'm like, well, why would I have a bunch of backups here, because I'm the only mind with this one thought. So narratively speaking, there shouldn't be 10 other people doing something on this. It's sort of it's that deer in the headlights moment where you're the only one on earth or something, you know? So I get into this very like literal use of instruments or other players, or how many minds are on this thought in particular. And yeah, so it was necessarily stripped back kind of for that reason.
I want to talk a little bit more about that fog you mentioned that you were in, which is very different fog than the fog in where I'm from. See, get it? You said before that you were working through some things before this record, and you even just mentioned it just then. And I read one quote that you said you were feeling quite lost. So help me understand this. You're coming off this very successful album with Medals. You're touring the world. You're becoming incredibly well known, and then that cycle stops. And what that means is that, you know, you tour the record, and then eventually you're off tour. You don't have anywhere else to go. Where were you mentally when you kind of got off that roller coaster?
Well, it's a pretty calm roller coaster. Like Reminder might have been I was more white knuckling my way through that record, reacting to a lot, and Medals was actually quite sane. And so in a way, there was maybe coming out the other end of a few years of touring Medals that had been done very intentionally, kind of to support everyone's real lives. You know, it wasn't like the blinding yourself with saying yes to, oh my God, there's opportunity. I don't want to look the gift horse in the mouth. You know, which is maybe my my Saskatchewan farmer roots. There's a job to do. Just do that job.
You do not want to say no to it. Yeah,
Yeah,
I
you
understand. You
just
do New Year's Rockin' Eve every year. You don't care. Right?
Yeah, there's just a Clydesdale worker mentality or something. So, so maybe I think it's just having been through that. I don't know, the eclipsing of the sun tunnel of touring a few times. I've been through it many times. I'd been through it. It's been that repetition of in and out of that since I was 16 years old.
Right.
So I think it was more just a practical consideration about 16-year-old Leslie chose to play a gig and then chose to play the next gig and then the one after that, and then she was mostly focused on the next gig. I wasn't thinking about that she could land at this point in her life. And, she / me wanted to think about what...
Speaking royally.
Yeah.
What was there a moment where you said, I'm not entirely sure why I'm doing this at all? Why I'm playing music at all?
Well, I guess I probably thought that, but in retrospect, what I came out learning was I don't need to begrudge the fact that this is the lens and the way I've considered life. I'm actually so fortunate that this is the way I've, framed experience and thoughts over the years. And I might have maybe taken it for granted in that tangle moment, wondering what's happening next, because I guess it's what I am and do and who I am. So at first, that second, you might think, yeah, but ... What else could I do?
And who says that's what you are?
Right.
Who says that's what you do?
I needed to double check that it's me that says that's what I am.
So I want to play a little more from the record. This is a different kind of clip. This is the last 30 seconds or so of a song on the album called "A Man Is Not His Song." And you may wonder why we're playing the last 30 seconds of a
I'm
Feist
wondering.
song. But you know what? Since we're on the radio, this will be easier to listen to than to describe it. I was just so curious. By the way, that's "A Man is Not His Song" from Leslie Feist's new record, Pleasure. So that's not you at the end. That's the incredible metal band Mastodon.
That's right.
I really wanted to ask while I was making soup, why does a metal band appear in the last 30 seconds of that song?
You'd probably need to hear the first 4 minutes.
I did.
No, I'm just no.
How I listen to records, I listen to the last 30 seconds of every song. Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, exactly. It's like reading the last page of a murder mystery and then going to the beginning.
But tell me about that decision.
I don't know if it's really... I don't know how many of these decisions that are kind of the framework of the record, like some of the sound Foley stuff. I don't know if that's something that it was instinct, it's just sort of, I understood that was necessary. Even the way to stop certain songs dead in their tracks, veer them to the left or right, crank them or fade them forever. I mean, they all have to do with the lyrics or the thematic stuff underneath, so can't rightly say. Right,
but what it brought to mind was that I can never really predict what I'm going to hear on any of your records. Like when I heard "Let It Die," maybe I was able to get an idea of what the Reminder would sound like, but I really was also kind of surprised by that record as well. And then Metals comes out. I think if you're listening to this and you're a Feist fan, there's something really enjoyable about the fact that you really don't know what the next record is going to sound like. But however, that's very different than a lot of artists. A lot of artists are relatively consistent in the sound, in the production, in the texture, in the lyrics and the mood of their records. But this isn't something that you've necessarily ever been interested in. And why not?
Well, I don't know. I can't say. It's I don't write a lot. I'm not that prolific. I seem to write a body of songs that encapsulate a time that becomes that next record. There's maybe only 2 or 3 songs that kind of I sort of pause them, or I'm incubating them for the next time. Like there's a song on Metals that is Anti-Pioneer on Metals. I think so. it was actually recorded for before even Let It Die. Like there's certain songs that I record for albums and they don't make it. They kind of show up 3 records later, sort of thing. So there's sometimes stuff that gets paused for later, but for the most part, I write what ends up being on the record. And they inform each other, those songs, and that time definitely finds its way into the, I don't know, I'm only writing for my own sake, I suppose. And
that's so rare. You know that. That's rare for people who sell a lot of records.
Well, maybe, I suppose. Maybe I'll sell way less. It's okay. Yeah, I don't really, I really, it is really a private process, and it's something that I don't approach casually, and it's something that this time around I tried to face a little bit more. Like I had read a lot of novelists' processes, and I thought I really liked the show up and like, what did they say? If the muse comes knocking, you don't want to be doing something else.
Making soup. So are you waking up in the morning and you're writing every day?
Well, I would go to my space and just force myself to be there and just sort of deal with what that day was through writing, you know. And often not much would come of it, or something you'd plant a little seed and 3 months later, you know. It was it was like a therapeutic process to just show up and see what needed to be written that day, and you know, and that was a long process, and it still only added up to 11 songs. Like I'm not prolific in that sense, you know.
I want to talk about one last moment before we let you go, which was just briefly at the Junos this year. You performed Leonard Cohen's "Hey, That's No Way to Say Goodbye," and you said last night that you had some kind of nerves around getting up on stage, and you haven't been up there in a while. That was a really powerful moment when you got up and sang that song. What was that moment like for you?
It was an honor. It really was. And myself and Ariel Engel and Daniela Gonzutite, who sang with me from Snowblink and Aurora, 2 women who we've collaborated a lot. We had a kind of faux supergroup with air quotes called Hydra.
I remember. It was very, very good. Did you guys do the Immigrant Song?
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a joy to sing with them, and they're, you know, real comrades, like sisters at arms. And so, yeah, to approach it with them, and 3 of us were sort of like hearts of stone, because there's no way to be really porous and be able to pull off a moment like that, because it was just, I took it very seriously. I mean, it's a life of that scope and an offering that he made of that, to that degree, what he gave all of us, the vocabulary he gave us for this puzzle called life, you know. It was a real honor, and we approached it like, I don't know, in a very meek way. And in a way, my goal was to just not get in the way of him or that song or his material, and to just maybe open up access for people to remember the place he had. So it was really nice for me, after having not played for so long, to have it be about someone else, about, you know, was not about me, which was a real pleasure, pun intended.
Well, pleasure, and it is entirely about you today. It's been a real pleasure speaking with you this morning.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for coming on. Leif Vollebekk is a songwriter from Montreal with a pretty big back catalog of songs. But recently, he wanted to write new ones. He just didn't know where to start. So to get things going, Leif started covering familiar songs like Read My Mind by The Killers or The Barstool Blues by Neil Young. And that familiarity helped refocus him and eventually inspire him. Leif's new album is called Twin Solitude. He shared a song with us on Q.
You was up to something, I was up to nothing. Bound to happen anyway. Rain in the streetlights, you in the midnight. We could have had it any day. Fire was raging down at the station. It's not ours to worry about, say. No truth at all. I should have made the call. Half a favor is no favor at all. She could have been another way. She could have been another way. You'll shop, you'll clear. You're there and you're near, but you're too close for me to see. The way that it was, not to spite, but because we live in eternity. Go tell Celeste, who loved you the best, as rain's falling in the street. Fluorescent lights pounding in the neighborhood store. Little bell rang when you came in the door. She could have been another way. Wish it could have been another way. Now I'm driving all night sedans. All the things I should have done, well, I do what I can. Listening to the radio as it plays on in my mind, how easily I lose the time. Wish it could have been another way. Wish it could have been another way. Wish it could have been another way. Wish it could have been.
Still to come on Q, Mary Walsh joins me to talk about her new book, Crying for the Moon. But first, Fred Penner is in studio to perform a song from his new record, Hear the Music. Of the many things you could say about Fred Penner, one thing is crystal clear. He works really well with others. Probably not surprising for someone who spent more than 30 years entertaining kids. Whether it was hosting the TV show Fred Penner's Place, or touring hit songs like The Cat Came Back.
But the cat came back the very next day.
I love that there's a hit song in Canada called The Cat Came Back. Anyway, Hear the Music is Fred Penner's 13th studio album. And far from being unlucky, it's packed with musical collaborators including Ron Sexsmith, Alex Cuba, The Good Lovelies, Afi Yurvanen, a.k.a. Bahamas. So here's Fred with the title track from the record. It's called I Hear the Music. Check it out, recorded in our Q Music studio. This is Fred Penner.
I hear the music every minute of the day. I can hear it all around me. I hear the music every minute of the day. I can hear it all around me. I hear the music every minute of the day. I can hear it all around me. I hear the music every minute of the day. I can hear it all around me. Clickety-clack as the train goes by, sound of a jet plane in the sky. A couple of dogs barking down the street saying, "Hi, how are you?" When we meet, a little bird sitting on my windowsill, singing a song, what a thrill. A baby and her brother laughing in the house, cats in the corner quiet as a mouse. Oh, I hear the music every minute of the day. I can hear it all around me. I hear the music every minute of the day. I can hear it all around me.
The album is called Hear the Music, and this is called I Hear the Music.
What can you tell me about it?
It's the first song that I've ever written that I had music before I had lyric. Paul and I, Mr. O'Neill, we were in Edmonton somewhere, and I'm having breakfast, and suddenly this da 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 got into my brain. And you know what it's like when those worms get in there. You've got to put them in some kind of technology so you don't forget it. So I'm sitting there having breakfast. I better get up to the room. And I get on my phone and I turn on the thing and I copied it down. I thought, well, I like that pattern. It's got a good feel to it. And so I found a lyric to go with it. And then I tried to make a chord progression, and there was no chord progression for it. It was a one-chord song. Mm-hmm. So I thought, well, one of my favorite songs of all time, and it was put the lime in the coconut, you drink them both up, you put the lime. Mm-hmm. One chord. I thought, well, maybe this is time for the Penner one-chord song to arrive.
It fills the air, no matter who you are, no matter where you go. Music is a part of your heart and soul. So come on, people, here's the thing. You're bound to feel better every time you sing. Oh, I hear the music every minute of the day. I can hear it all around me. I hear the music every minute of the day. I can hear it all around me. I hear the music every minute of the day. I can hear it all around me. I hear the music every minute of the day. I can hear it all around me. Yep.
We've got another song for you from Fred Penner coming up later in the show. But first, Mary Walsh is here with her book, Crying for the Moon.
There you are, right honorable as usual. Yeah.
That's Mary Walsh ambushing former Canadian Prime Minister Jean Chrétien. That's how most of us know Mary, as a comedian. But for years, she's had a different dream. Mary Walsh always wanted to write a book. Crying for the Moon is Mary Walsh's first book of fiction. It's about a young woman named Maureen, struggling to make sense of the world. Mary recently spoke to me about her protagonist, Maureen, and how much of herself and her own experiences are in her. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Congratulations on the book.
Thank you.
I have so much to ask you about here. There's a lot of different topics in this book. Murder that needs to be solved. It's occasionally a very funny book. And I want to talk about all that in a minute, but I want to talk about the switch. What went from wanting to perform to wanting to be an author? What was the moment where you said, I got a book in me?
Well, I never wanted to be a performer. Right. I always wanted to be a novelist. Mm-hmm. Somebody said, why not an autobiography? I'm not really interested in writing an autobiography anyway. But
why now?
Well, I guess I really now is because, and it's an old saying, many people have said it before me, but if not now, when? Right. And so you can't go on your whole life longing to do something and never have the guts to do it. Yeah. And so I just did, because I thought, well, and even now when I look at the book, I think, well, whatever happens, it's all right. At least I did it. I'm not always going, like every time the Giller Prizes would be announced, I go, and then I kind of shake myself and go, of course, you have to write the book first before you get the prize.
I mean, it helps.
Yeah, it helps. It really does. Yeah. They never even gave me a nod. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? With all the longing I had.
They didn't say, if Mary Walsh released a book, I'm sure she would have gone on.
I'm sure she would have gotten on the long list at least. But so, all that longing and all that struggling and all that, I hate to say bitterness, because bitterness is too strong a word, but all that resentment that others are doing things that you want to do and you don't do it, and you just go on and on like that, and then finally you hit a sort of place where, the other things in my life weren't going. I wasn't getting a lot of work at that point as an actor, and I couldn't get anything produced and stuff, and I had this, this writing that I'd done, and I took it to my agent, and we took it to HarperCollins, and so I'm sure if I hadn't been doing so badly, I probably would never have gotten the courage to do it. But I'm really, really glad now that I did.
When you find out that Mary Walsh, this acclaimed humorist, this very, very funny person, wrote a book, I think there's some kind of expectation that this was going to be a book of humor and a book of satire. And I should mention that I laughed for two very distinct reasons in this book. One, because some of the dialogue was just very funny. Others, because I just recognized, I know that guy. I grew up next, my uncle's that guy. I know that guy. You could have written a humor or satire book and it would have been very expected. But as we just said, these are about very serious, very complex topics. Why did you decide to go this route in your first novel?
I don't think I decided to go this route. I think this was the book that was there. And, it was the book that was kind of waiting to be written. It's so typically a first novel, isn't it, in a way, except that usually you're not 65 by the time you get to it. I wrote out of my, to a certain degree, not that my experience is the same as Maureen's, but I was surrounded by the experiences that were somewhat the same as Maureen's. And so I wrote from my experience. I wrote from what I knew.
You felt no pressure to write something that seemed like on brand for Mary Walsh?
No. No, I didn't really. It didn't occur to me. Sometimes like people go, "You're so brave," and I go, "No, stupid," because it doesn't occur to me that this will be, that this could be trouble. I think, no, let's do this. This will be good.
Well, this is what you and I were talking about before we came in, because I said I don't understand. I'm only beginning to understand just how brave it was for you to be part of COGCO and to write those sketches at a time when you were taking on the church and you were taking on the government in Newfoundland, at a time where no one was doing that, and you guys were kids and you were doing that, and you said something like that. We weren't brave, Tom. We just didn't know any better.
Yeah, that's right.
If you're listening to this right now and you hear Mary Walsh talk about COGCO, you might know COGCO from the CBC TV show that was on nationally, but I mean COGCO to Newfoundlanders, I mean you guys were Monty Python. I mean you guys were not only the most important comedy influence in the history of the island, but also a very, very brave one. And we touched on this a little bit earlier, but I want to ask it in this context. When Joel Thomas Hines came in to talk about his book, We'll All Be Burnt in Our Beds Some Night,
Yes.
What is it that you like? What is it that you want to do to talk about some of the darker aspects of Newfoundland culture throughout your career that perhaps isn't put into the tourism commercials?
Well, in 1952, we gave up the right to self-government, when there was a time in the 30s when everybody was questioning democracy. The Italians gave it up, the Germans gave it up, and the Newfoundlanders gave it up. Mm-hmm. We went with a British protectorate. And so there was a lot of shame, when you were, and then you came up to Toronto and people just died laughing just because you said you were from Newfoundland. And and you felt, and Joey was always saying he was dragging you, kicking and screaming out of the 19th century and into the 20th. Mm-hmm. And exhorting you to burn your boats and burn everything that you believed in.
Building hockey stick factories and putting bisons on rocks. Yeah,
yes, yeah. Bisons on rocks. That's my favorite. Yeah. But so there was a period of time that when we were coming up, that we started to try to take some pride in who we were, despite the fact that nobody, like we always said, Canadians were asking the big question, like, who are we? And when we were traveling around Canada with COGCO, we always knew who the Canadians were. There, the crowd thought they were so much effing better than we were, right? It wasn't hard to tell who was a Canadian. But and Newfoundlanders always knew who they were. There was no question of that. I guess that's an island thing. It's not just Newfoundland. But we always knew who we were, but we were never sure what our worth was. I guess at some point when we were feeding the world, when we were providing the major protein for the world, we must have felt. But by the time I came along, we really had much like poor old Maureen, we had no sense of self-worth at all. Mm-hmm. And
now that the lifelong journey has concluded and you have the book out.
I'm only 65.
Well, sorry, the lifelong artistic career path has come to its natural next point.
Yes,
that's pretty good.
Yeah, okay, that's good. That's good.
So keep me around a few more weeks. Yeah. Is there another book in you?
Well, I have some short stories that I'm thinking about, and I don't know. I have no idea. I don't have the answer to that, but I do have some short stories. So ever since the book actually got published on the 18th, I've been thinking about them, and they need a lot of work and, a big rewrite and stuff like that. But it might be worthwhile, pulling them out.
It's not so scary.
Not yet. Well, we'll wait and we'll see what the crowd from the Globe and Mail say.
We'll see. Mary, thanks for coming in.
Tom, thank you for having me.
Come back.
I will.
Whenever you want. When Q continues, Fred Penner has more music for you. But first, I talked to British MC Little Simz about trusting her gut when it comes to making music.
As long as the people believe in me, I don't mind.
Just a tiny bit of the song Our Conversations by the British rapper Little Simz, getting a little help on that track from Toronto band Bad Bad Not Good. Little Simz is someone who has the blessings of music royalty. She shared the stage with Lauryn Hill and Nas. She's been name-dropped by Kendrick Lamar. She had her mixtape put out by Jay-Z's website. This is someone who is focused on herself and wants to stay that way. And she wants to make decisions only for herself. And you can hear that determination all over her second record. It's a concept album called Stillness in Wonderland. It's a take on Lewis Carroll's Alice in Wonderland, but Little Simz put a personal twist on it. Here's our conversation. Where in North London, where in your trajectory did you say, I think I'm going to be an MC?
I must have been around, well, I started when I was 9. And
That's young.
Yeah, I'm 23 now, so it's been a minute. And when I was 14, I think is when I started to take it serious and kind of said to myself, this is what I want my life to be. This is what I want to do as a career.
Was there a moment where it was
pursued
was there like you heard something or you did something and you thought, yeah, I'm going to do this for good?
Not anything specific. I've just always been like a performing arts kid. So whether it was dance, music, acting, like anything in that field or that area was just me. That's what I enjoyed the most. So it kind of felt like inevitable for me to be in this space, in this place. Yeah.
This is a concept record.
Yeah, Stillness in Wonderland. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Stillness in Wonderland. If you didn't catch this, that's the second record.
Mm-hmm.
If people are, I listened to it last night. It's wicked.
Thank you.
It's really, really great.
Thanks.
Let's walk people through what the concept is.
Cool. So Stillness in Wonderland, yeah, like you said, it's my second album. It is, I guess, follows the theme of Alice in Wonderland. So for those who know the story, you can already kind of imagine it's very trippy. With this album, I wanted to make it very visual. So even though it's audio and it's musical, I wanted the listener to feel like they're immersed in a world, and that they can almost like be there and see exactly what's happening. You feel like you're following the White Rabbit. You feel like you're in that kind of atmosphere.
But it's funny because even though you mentioned the White Rabbit, this isn't I don't want you, if you're listening to this, to get the impression that this is a retelling of Alice in Wonderland.
Not at all.
This is real life for you too, right?
Yeah, definitely. And that's kind of what makes it really special for me, is like her story is almost a reflection of mine.
How so?
Just in terms of trying to find my way through life, I guess. Being 23 and being immersed in the industry in which I thought was going to be very different from what I imagined.
What do you mean? What did you think it was going to be?
I thought it was going to be a walk in the park. I thought it was going to be... I don't think it would be as stressful as it gets at times, or as lonely.
It's lonely, man.
Yeah, for sure. And it's things I'm now coming to realize and have been experiencing for a minute. So it was, I don't know, it felt right at the time I was making the record for me to address and talk about these things. Because my music's very personal, you know, it always comes from like a personal standpoint on what I'm experiencing now.
It's interesting you say that, because at the end of the record, you're disenchanted with Wonderland. And at the end, I want to quote you. You say, I can't afford to be here anymore. It's not real. It's a figment of my imagination. Real stuff is happening. It's radio.
Yeah.
Is happening, and my people need me. I'm out.
Yeah.
What does Wonderland represent to you at that point? Real people need me. I'm out.
I think I said my people.
My people need me. That's I got it right the first time. My people need me. I'm out.
Yeah, I feel like at that point I was closing the record. It just felt like, all right, I've kind of been in my own bubble. I've been isolated from everything that's happening in the real world, and I'm aware that I have a responsibility and I have a part to play, and people look to me to an extent, and I feel like I need to come back into that world. And
I don't know what you mean.
In terms of Okay, so Wonderland is a world that I've almost created myself in my head. And I'm a person, I'm very introverted. I'm very always in my own head and my own mind. And sometimes that leads me to kind of shut myself off from everything else happening on the outside world.
Right.
Just naturally, I don't even think about it, it just happens. And so I realised that often that's not a healthy thing to do, to not pay attention to, like, let's just say the news or what's happening in the world. And,
Right, okay, I know what you mean.
you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I kind of came to a realisation that as much as, you know, I find comfort or find it easier to just be in my own space, it's not, it could be more harmful than helpful. And yeah, I'm just aware, like I was saying before, I have a responsibility and I have a part to play and I have a voice and people look to me. So I feel like I need to be present with everyone.
But that's funny because I think existing in your own space and kind of writing your own story is something that's been working for you for a very long time. I'm thinking about on your first record. I'm thinking about that song Wings, the type of music that ain't ever going to sell. Well, you should have never told me that. And it's like, that's not you. That is totally you inside your world and addressing some naysayers. Is that right? Am I getting that right? Like you seem fueled by people who tell you can't do it.
Yes, that is like fire in my belly, for real.
Why is that?
Because it's just like, yeah, I can't do it. Watch me. That's literally it.
I think a lot of people would say, oh, you can't do it, and they'd experience some doubt.
Yeah, no, I mean, I guess it's that like glass ceiling effect, you know, and self-fulfilling prophecy. If someone's continuously telling you, you know, this can't be done, this can't be done, this can't be done, some people actually start to believe that. But I'm a person, I'd take that and use that as like, nah, I'm about to do it now.
Little Simz, thanks so much for talking.
Cool, thanks.
It's been a real pleasure talking to you. It really has.
You too.
We have another toe tapper from Fred Penner for you when Q returns. We're going to leave you today with another song from Fred Penner's 13th album, Hear the Music. Remember, for more performances, uncut interviews, and full episodes of QTV, pay us a visit at cbc.ca/Q. I'm Tom Power. Later on.
You know that's true, all part of giving and lending a hand, helping each other grow. Look on the ground, look to the sky, learn from the ants and bees. Cooperation's a wonderful word, it starts with you and me. Working together makes whatever you do go a little bit faster, you know that's true. All part of giving and lending a hand, helping each other grow. Maybe it takes more than one pair of hands to get the job done. Your brain is for thinking and figuring out, two heads are better than one. Working together makes whatever you do go a little bit faster, you know that's true. All part of giving and lending a hand, helping each other grow. Building a house straight and tall, holding the ladder so I don't fall, picking the apples from the top of a tree. Vitamin C, making a dinner for all to share, setting the table shows you care, planting a garden, water and seed, so many mouths to feed. It's no surprise the difference we make, something we all can do. This fact of life I'd like to share, don't bite off more than you can chew. Working together makes whatever you do go a little bit faster, you know that's true. All part of giving and lending a hand, helping each other grow. Working together makes whatever you do go a little bit faster, you know that's true. All part of giving and lending a hand, helping each other grow, helping each other grow.